You know, it's really hard to overstate the cultural importance of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama's landmark Journeys of the West-inspired odyssey about a curious boy with a tail who grows up to be the universe's greatest hero. Debuting in 1984, it remains the second best-selling manga of all time, despite only being published for 11 years, influencing a generation of comic writers and inspiring blockbusters like One Piece and Naruto. And that's just in Japan. Over here in America, the anime adaptation Dragon Ball Z was unlike anything seen in the States before, introducing a higher degree of violence and intensity to afternoon programming while being one of the few animated shows to embrace long-form continuity and story arcs. Its popularity promptly exploded, transforming the obscure Texas-based localization company Funimation into today's premier importer of anime. And of course, most importantly, it brought us the 2009 live-action classic Dragon Ball Evolution. What? No, just me? Oh, alright. But today we're going to talk about the latest video game adaptation, Dragon Ball FighterZ. I know it looks like FighterZ, but apparently it's pronounced Fighters. And we're going to discuss what makes it a good game in its own right, but most importantly, why it's the best Dragon Ball game ever. So let's hurry up and go Han already. Part 1. It's a pretty low bar. Let's start off with the most obvious and, I guess to some people, controversial point. Most Dragon Ball games are terrible, usually half-baked ripoffs of other popular games, which can only be appreciated by children and stoners. I know that sounds harsh, but none of these games would survive retail without the recognizable characters of Dragon Ball, a fact that publisher Bandai is keenly aware of, carelessly pushing out cheap cash-ins based off of popular anime since the early 1980s. And why not? They always make their money back, suckering in fans with promises of RPGs, action games, and fighters, when in reality they're more or less visual representations of those genres with an embarrassing collision of slapdash mechanics. I mean, have you seen Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu? Now, I'm not gonna dog the entire catalog. Some players fondly recall the Dragon Ball Z Budokai trilogy, and personally I'll always have a soft spot for the Tenkaichi games. And sure, there's even a few hidden gems like Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. Hey, wait a minute! All those games were published by Atari before Bandai got the license back. Damn it, Bandai! But even Xenoverse 2, the last major game before FighterZ, was an under-designed button-mashing mess, which was nearly identical to the first game's under-designed button-mashing mess. And it still managed to sell over 3 million copies, which means Bandai has absolutely no incentive to change their current output, which makes FighterZ all the more remarkable, because it's actually a good game. Part 2. No license required. Now let's assume you have absolutely no interest in Dragon Ball, but you saw the trailer for FighterZ and it piqued your interest. Dragon Ball FighterZ is a fantastically aggressive, blazingly fast, deeply complex 3 vs 3 fighting game that anyone, from newcomers to competitive players, can enjoy. This is due to the cleverly designed ground-level mechanics, creating an approachable yet customizable combat style. Melee attacks have all been streamlined to 3 separate buttons, light, medium, and heavy. By simply pressing one of those buttons in quick succession, characters engage in brutally flashy combos, and a 4th button is used for long-distance projectiles. Finally, the super powerful special attacks are all done with a quarter circle variation, with the input being identical across the entire cast. And there you have it! The initial frustration of learning how to do cool moves is done, and I can't stress this enough. If you and a buddy get together, you're bound to have plenty of close matches, snappy character swaps, and earth-shattering finishes. Yes, there's certainly more to the game than mashing the same buttons over and over again, but if that's all you want to do, and you're playing against someone of similar skill, FighterZ will make you feel like a world-class competitor. Part 3. Less level, more rumble. But hey, let's return to the fan perspective. Some have voiced disappointment over the smaller selection of characters and a few notable omissions. And while it's true you can't have Master Roshi take on Grandpa Gohan in the hyperbolic time chamber, FighterZ wisely slims down the roster to 24 meaningful characters. I mean, do you really need 4 different versions of Cell when you can just have the most recognizable one? Best of all, there's an in-universe explanation as to why fighters of wildly different power levels are placed on equal footing when mysterious waves strip away their Kai. Hey, I didn't say it was a good explanation. In fact, the story mode can be a bit of a slog, with a long-winded battle against the newest creation of Dr. Gero, Android 21, and a really confusing subplot about a soul without a body that increases fighting abilities. Look, it's not great. But the good news is, Yamcha and Tien are treated like real threats again, and the story mode still has plenty of great moments in the pre-fight conversations, where the cast of characters tackle the canonical minutia, like who should Gotenks call dad, or how Goku's long-term goal is to go to hell. Yes, really. Like I said, the premise is pretty neat, with an armada of clones destroying the Earth. It's just too bad the story never escalates beyond that. It's a shame it doesn't take cue from other single players like Soul Calibur or Mortal Kombat, and include something like match modifiers. But taken simply as a fighting game, Dragon Ball deserves a lot of credit for focusing on the franchise's most endearing characters rather than a predictable lineup of the most powerful. Part 4, The Long Tail. Now let's be honest, pretty much everything mentioned so far could be said about a handful of other Dragon Ball games, but none of those include the polish and depth of an Arc System Works fighting game. For those of you unaware, Arc is best known for their long-running Guilty Gear and BlazBlue series, and they're certainly not resting on their laurels here, introducing a number of new and exciting mechanics. As inviting as those early combos are, they're quickly replaced by a surprising amount of technique, including dashes, sparkling health recovery, teleportation, and unblockable setups. Even after a dozen hours in single player, my early online matches were brisk and demoralizing. Frankly, I couldn't begin to tell what I was doing wrong. And that's because unlike most other fighting games, defense is largely based on counterattacks, quick recoveries, and capitalizing with a long string of attacks. Blocking is still crucial, especially in the face of gigantic energy blasts, but success comes from recognizing your opponent's next maneuver and beating them to the punch. This is all a bit easier once you recognize the color-coded outlines of dashing, unblockables, and Kai charging, but be prepared to spend extra time completing combo challenges, building a team of complementary characters, and losing plenty of matches before making any headway in multiplayer. And yes, this level of difficulty might intimidate some players, but honestly, that's what makes it a great fighting game. Even when I was at my most discouraged, I would seek out improvements, and usually I would find them. If you're just a fan of Arc System Works, this is a must-play. Part 5, the best Dragon Ball game ever. Whether you're a fan of the original Dragon Ball, Z, or Super, nearly every fandom is represented in this highly balanced, brazenly explosive fighter. Well, unless you like GT. Sorry about that. If you're just looking for an afternoon of passing around controllers with friends, it's here. And if you're patient enough to learn the nuances of individual characters, you'll be rewarded with dozens of hours of online play. The point is, it can be enjoyed by nearly everyone, from button mashers to frame counters. And that's remarkable for any fighting game. And yeah, it took a long time to get here. Bandai traditionally cranks out numerous awful Dragon Ball games, which all financially perform just fine. But I think it's safe to say Fighter's response has been stronger than usual, with a generally positive reception from fans and critics alike. Hopefully, Bandai will take notice of this, and we'll see a sequel down the line. Either way, Dragon Ball FighterZ is an outstanding surprise, a must-play for fans, and the best game in series history. Hey, by the way, can we get a Budokai Tenkaichi HD collection? Okay, bye.